average American, now I'm not saying this is us as Christians, but the average American each day, about 50% of their words are negative. About 30% of their words are positive, and about 20% of their words are neutral. That's words or statements each day. Now, again, I'm not saying that as Christians is what we should be doing or what we are doing, but that's the average American. So what we do say does matter. You can look there. I put some points there. What negative words? What do they do? You think about that when we say negative words to individuals. What are some of the things that they do? Well, certainly they can diminish others. They can cause pain. They can cause people to be nervous. They can cause confusion. They can cause criticism. Certainly we use negative words to accuse others, to lash out. We cause others to lose respect for us when we use negative words. We hurt others. We fuel tension. Negative words cause fear in others' lives and our lives. They make us defensive, make others defensive. They lower our self-esteem. Sometimes negative words are used to nag and resentful. And I'm sure there are hundreds of other ways that negative words influence that you could be thinking of right now. But those are just a few that I wrote down. Positive words. What's the positive words do? Well, here's some things that I mentioned here. They can empower us to better things, to greater things. They can uplift us. They can encourage us. They can praise others, make them feel better. They can honor people. They support people. They reassure people. They build confidence. And they inspire. So as Christians, we need to think about each day how we're using our words and how we're using them as an influence to others. When I was at school and teaching, and some of you others who taught, Larry and others, you've probably heard this statement. It takes 10 positive statements to make up for one negative statement you make to a student. And you need to be aware of that. And administrators always told us when you're talking to a parent and it's maybe not a good situation, they're upset with you, is always lead off with something positive about the child and say something positive about the student. Sometimes that's harder than others, but try to be positive in some shape, form, or fashion. Larry.
Before we get too far on this, because another very positive passage about speaking and things found in Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens. One of the ways we can sharpen one another is in communication and speech to one another.
True. Very good. So I listed some things there, and I want to read some of those passages about sins the Bible talks about through our speech, through tongues. And you can see some of them, and there's probably might be others. I might have left something out. I didn't mean to, but just some ones that I noticed. Lying, gossiping, slandering, boasting, quarreling, filthy language, foolish talking, and coarse jesting. Now you think about those things there. All those are sins, and they come from our speech, things that we say every day. Is that me? My phone is off. Okay, I apologize. I'd like to turn over to Revelation. If you have your Bibles, turn over to Revelation. Let's look at just a few things there the Bible talks about in Revelation 21. And the first sin that I mentioned there that the Bible talks about was the sin of lying. In Revelation here, in the last 2 chapters of Revelation, 3 different times it talks about the sin of lying. Revelation 21, verse 8. And this is talking about the end of times. But the fearful and the unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. And if you look down in the same chapter, in verse 27, it says, there shall in no wise enter into anything that defileth, neither whatsoever worketh abomination or maketh a lie, but they that were written in the book of life. And then if you turn over to the 22nd chapter of Revelation, and you begin looking there, make sure I'm right here, what verse? Verse 15 says, for without are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and idolaters, and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. So three times there in the last 2 chapters of the Bible, it talks about people not being able to enter heaven, and it talks about, again, we're talking about our speech, and one of the sins of speech is lying. And if you flip over to Proverbs chapter 6, most of you know where I'm going to on that. Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 16, the Bible talks about 6 things that the Lord hates. And he says, yea, 7 are abomination to him. And he lists 7 things there. And 3 of those 7 involve what? Our speech, if you think about it. Look what he says. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked imaginations, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren. So are you starting to understand some of the gravity of our speech and some of the things that we say and how the words that come out, that we use them? We need to be careful, don't we? We need to be careful of what we say. And if not only for ourselves, but for our influence for good with others. And you can see there a couple other passages. I won't take time to read those, but they're listed there for you. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 3 through 5. Colossians 3, verses 8 through 9. 2 Timothy 3, verses 1 through 5. And Romans chapter 1, verses 28 through 32. One other thing I wanted, after studying my lesson, I found another thing that may be a sin of the tongue. It's probably could be listed in with these others, is hasty speech, rash talking. Turn over to Ecclesiastes chapter 5. In Ecclesiastes chapter 5, the writer here is talking about individuals going into the house of the Lord and making vows or saying things that they don't mean or they don't handle right, or don't, whatever they say, they don't back up. I'll put it that way. That could include our prayers. That can include our songs that we sing. Look there in chapter 5, starting there in verse 2. What does it say? But be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven, and thou upon earth. Therefore let the words be few. Verse 3, for a dream cometh through the multitude of businesses, and a fool's voice is known for a multitude of words. When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it, for he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. In other words, if you say something, if you make a vow that you're going to live your life for Christ, do that. If you say something in a song, do you really mean that in a song? If you say something in a prayer, do you really mean that? Look at verse 5. It says, better it is that thou shouldest not vow than thou shouldest vow and not pay. Suffer not the mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Neither say thou before the angel that there was an error. Wherefore should God be angry at thy voice and destroy the work of thine hand? For in the multitude of dreams and many words there are also divers vanities, but fear God. So hasty speech, and again, as I said at the beginning, this lesson is a lot for me. And the hasty speech I thought of is, how many times have I said something, and I don't know if you're like me, you said something, and 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later or later that evening you said, I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I just kept my mouth shut. I shouldn't have said that way. That could have caused somebody to be upset. Have you ever been that way? Hasty speech. Look at Proverbs 29 and verse 20. Seest thou a man that is hasty in his words? There is more hope of a fool than of him. So we have warnings throughout the Bible about our speech and how we talk. And I know a lot of you are thinking about James, and we're going to get to James here in just a second. But what we say matters. How we say things matters. And we need to be mindful of those things. Anybody has any comments before I move on?
Lies, I look at lies as being one of the most common sins throughout the world. Because you have situations where maybe a child is brought up in an abusive home, and his lies are self-preservation. He tells his mother and father lies again and again, and he can be punished for it or something. And it becomes a habit-forming thing. And you'll see it in the workforce where somebody won't face their boss and be honest with him. They'll tell a white lie, as we call it sometimes. It's still a downfall of man's integrity. I mean, if you have true integrity in your life, whether you know a wrong or don't know a wrong, you make a judgment call. Can that person handle the truth? Or does that person deserve the truth? And those kind of things I think play into all of that about our own spiritual basis in our life. I know I had to deal with bosses that wanted to hear a lie before they wanted to hear the truth. But you had to be truthful about it, even at your own personal experience.
Again, those of you who've been school teachers, you have to deal with discipline of children a lot of times and solve problems. And you would have one kid over here who, Johnny, what happened? And you knew Johnny was lying and he would not tell you the truth, and you seen what happened. And you would tell him, now, Johnny, that didn't really happen, did it? Oh, yes. And they would just over and over and continually tell lies. And then you'd have other individuals over here that might not be the best kid in the world, but they would tell you the truth. And I always dealt with kids a little bit different. And then I would tell them, I said, listen, I know what's going on. And I know what happened. I want you to tell me the truth. And they would. They'd tell me the truth. And I'd tell them, I said, listen, what you did is wrong. There's going to be consequences for what you did that was wrong. But the fact that you told me the truth, we can handle it a little bit different than this person over here that is not telling the truth. So, any other comments before we move on? In Matthew chapter 15, verses 11, the Bible talks about it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth. So I thought we would spend a little time today dealing with a song. And what are songs supposed to do? What does Colossians chapter 3, verse 16 say songs do? Edify. Teach us, admonish us, don't they? Okay? So I thought we'd deal with a song, and I'm not going to sing it. It's 719 in your books, Love One Another, that deals with unkind words, that deals with maybe upsetting friendships, that deals with not good use of the tongue. The first verse of that song says, angry words, oh let them never, from the tongue unbridled slip. May the heart's best impulse ever check them ere they soil the lips. Have you ever thought about that? What does it mean to bridle the tongue? How do we bridle our tongue? Think before you speak. Okay. What do we say? What is in the heart usually comes out in our mouth. If we put good things in our heart, if we're dwelling on the Lord's Word, if we're thinking about His Word, if we're continually in good thoughts and prayers, then better words will come out. Would that be true? Any others? Look at number 1 there at the bottom of the page. The need to bridle the tongue. Let's turn over to James chapter 1. James chapter 1 verse 26 says, if any man among you seem to be religious and bridleth not his tongue, he deceives his own heart. This man's religion is in vain. Bridleth not his own tongue, he deceives his own heart, and this man's religion is not in vain. If we flip to chapter 3 of James, we see there the writer of James talking about the tongue. And he compares it to 3 small things. And he talks about how powerful the tongue really is. He talks about bits in horses' mouths and how big, you think about how big or how much a horse might weigh and how that bit controls where the horse goes and how little of a thing it is. He talks about the rudder of the ship. You think how big a ship is and the rudder controls whether it goes. And then he talks about just a small spark of fire and how a big forest fire starts from just a small spark. And he says the tongue is like that. It's a small part of our body. And then later on, and we're going to read these verses, in verse 7 and 8, he talks about the wild animals that have been tamed. And you think about the wild animals been tamed. A lion. And you see guys in circus put their hand or their body parts in there. And you think about elephants and any type of animal that's been tamed. And how man has been able to do that, but yet he can't tame the words a lot of times that comes out of his mouth. Winston.
Yeah, these verses here that we're looking at here remind me of how a lie will end up being reinforced by another lie or defended by another lie and then another lie. And so the lie keeps growing because they couldn't tell the truth in the first place.
My dad said there was a politician, I hope I'm right about this, but there was a politician that said, if you repeat a lie enough times, it becomes the truth. And a politician had said that, and it's along the same lines as you're talking about that. Let's turn over to James, the 3rd chapter, if you have your Bibles with you there. And let's begin there in verse 1, and let's read down through verse 8 there. And I don't want to insult your intelligence, but I want to read this here. I know we all can read, but my brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, think about that. Have you ever offended anybody in word? We probably all have, haven't we? If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man. So what's he saying there? We all have done that, haven't we? And able also to bridle the whole body. Behold, we put bits in the horse's mouth, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold also the ships, which though they be so great, they are driven of fierce winds, yet they are turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So the tongue is among our members, that it defile the whole body, and he setteth on fire the course of nature, and is set on fire of hell. For every kind of beast, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea, is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. Look at verse 8. But the tongue can no man tame. It is unruly evil, full of deadly poison. And let's go ahead and read verse 9 there. Therefore bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessings and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. Winston.
Sometimes we need to put in context, what we just read here. And we have to remember James is talking basically to Christians, people that have already repented of their sin. And I like in the English Standard, it uses, instead of lying, it uses stumble. We are walking a straight and narrow path, and if we stumble, we're falling away from that walking of that straight and narrow path. So we're failing to stay on that straight and narrow path. And so lie is tied to the fact that we're stumbling ourselves as Christians. We're failing to live up to the standards that God wants us to live up to.
Any others? All right, flip it over there on the back side, where it says B. The tongue reflects the true expression of an inward man. Let's flip over to Matthew and read that. And again, a lot of the things I've got today are Bible verses, and I don't want to insult your intelligence, but I think it's good for us to read those and be reminded of those things, and just be reminded of how powerful our speech is, and how it affects us and others, especially as our Christian influence. Matthew chapter 12, verse 34 and 35. I'm in Matthew 25. There you go. Okay. O generation of vipers, how can ye, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh. And I read that earlier. A good man out of the good treasure of the heart bringeth forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure bringeth forth evil things. So as we think in our heart, a lot of times we're going to be expressed in our speech. Turn over to Proverbs chapter 15. We've just read about the blessings and the cursings that proceed out of the mouth. Let's turn to Proverbs there, chapter 15. The tongue has the power to do both good and evil. And let's look at verses 1, 2, and 4. And in those verses there, it's going to talk about a good thing and an evil thing. And again, the whole book of Proverbs is filled with wise sayings about man and his speech and the way we should control our speech. Verse 1, a soft answer turneth away wrath, yet grievous words stir up anger. So words can be used for good, words can be used for bad. Verse 2, the tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. Again, good uses versus not so good uses. Look at verse 4. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but the perseverance therein is a breach of the spirit. Good uses versus evil uses. The same mouth, same words. Look at verse number 2 of the song that we talked about. Angry words are lightly spoken. Bitterest thoughts are rashly stirred. Brightest links of life are broken by a single angry word. You know, and this is one of my favorite songs. This is one of the reason I picked this, and because I needed this lesson. Brightest links of life are broken by a single angry word. Can any of you identify with that? Hopefully I'm not the only one who can identify with that. Look at number 2 there, the advantages of restraining the tongue. And if we will read some of those, we won't read all of those. Number 1, avoid sin. And I gave you a passage there. Number 2, it keeps us out of trouble. It makes one appear to be wise. It helps us being slow to speak. I think we might have read that in James. Uncontrolled tongues, poorly chosen words, unthoughtful speech, rashly spoken words can destroy friendships, harm relationships. So, how do we use the tongue? Let's look in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 24. And you can see there I put, use them for sweetness to the soul. Proverbs 16:24. What does that say? Pleasant words are as a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and health to the bones. You think about those people who are encouragers in your life. And you think about the times that you needed to be encouraged, or the times you needed to be patted on the back. And you think about just the words that those people said to you and how they said it to you and what it meant to you. Okay? So we can use words to uplift, to make people feel better. It's a thing of beauty. Proverbs 25:11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and pictures of silver. We've all heard this verse before, but you think about it again. How do we use our words? How do we use our Christian influence with our words? Are we doing it as much as we should, as often as we should? In Matthew chapter 12, why should we think about how we use our words? Why should we worry that it matters? Well, look at Matthew chapter 12 and verse 36 and 37. We're going to be judged by the words that we use. Verse 36. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. Now, folks, that's a scary thought. It should be a scary thought. Read that again. Every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account of thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words shalt thou be condemned. We're going to be judged by the things that we say. That's the reason what we say matters. That's the reason we need to be more conscious of what we say and how we say it. And then in James, we already read James chapter 3 a little bit, but in verse 6 there it talks about defying the body, our words. The last verse of the song, it says, love is much too pure and holy, friendship is too sacred far. For a moment's reckless folly, thus to desolate and mar. And I put there, if we think about the importance of friendship, and we think about the blessings of friendship, how important those are, and what they mean to us. I don't want to embarrass Brother Chuck, but he gets a group together each week, and he spends a lot of time on the phone calling people to get them to go play golf. And there's not a whole lot of world-class golf being played when we go play. But there's a lot of laughs, and there's a lot of friendship. And I needed that. And my wife realized I need that. And she said, you really enjoy this, don't you? And I said, I do. I said, I love Chuck. I love what he does. I love that he cares enough about everybody to get everybody together. Friendships are important. And I put some friendships there that you can look at. Think about Ruth and Naomi, a daughter-in-law, and how she reacted to her mother-in-law. And while in today's time, a lot of times that's not the best relationship. Sometimes it's portrayed on TV. Maybe it's not a great relationship. But yet that was a great relationship there, wasn't it? A daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. Jonathan and David in 1 Samuel. You think about that relationship there. And how Jonathan's dad was trying to kill David. Yet those two formed a tremendous bond, relationship. Jesus and John, Paul and Timothy. Friendships and love are important. Look at the benefits of friends. A man for all seasons. Again, we'll turn back to Proverbs and we'll finish up looking at some things there in Proverbs. Verse 17 and 17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Again, the benefits of friendship. They're closer than blood relatives. Look at chapter 18, verse 24. A man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Sometimes we can have people that give us advice. Sometimes we can have people that rebuke us. And when a good friend does it, sometimes it means more, doesn't it? It means more to us. Look in Proverbs 27, verse 6. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Look at Proverbs 27, 9. Yes, Larry, I'm sorry.
Just to elaborate a little bit of that, because that encouragement, the words of advice or whatever, notice that they can still hurt, because it's referred to as a wound. Pray for the wounds of a friend. But if there's that true friendship, you realize, hey, they're not out to hurt you. They are there to help you. And even though it may sting for a little bit, it was meant for your betterment, not for your hurt.
And that goal is a friend telling you the truth.
Right.
You might not want to hear it.
Right.
We had a baseball coach at Ringo High School, and I don't want to call his name. He's a good friend. And he was there after Coach Womack. I'll just put it right there. And he went to Heritage High School. And we get in situations dealing with parents or dealing with kids or dealing with situations, and I would sit and listen, and he'd be fussing, and I'd say, "Can I tell you something as a friend?" And he'd start laughing. He said, "You know you can." And to this day, he still calls me and talks to me, and he says, "You was always a friend. You always told me the truth. You always told me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear." And a good friend will do that, won't they? They'll tell you what you need to hear, not what you necessarily want to hear. And those can be two different things. We've got to finish up, but the last part of the chorus of the song says, "Love one another, thus saith the Savior. Children, obey the blessed command." Love one another, thus saith the Savior. Children, obey the blessed command. And then you can see there I put the need that we have to love one another. Love as he loved, and loved as I loved you. And then I want to close, if everybody will turn to Ephesians chapter 4. And I know some of you biblical scholars were thinking, is he not going to repeat that verse there? Yes, I was going to close that. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. Through the rest of the chapter. "Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of God, whereby ye are sealed unto the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you." That concludes our lesson. I got through. I hope I didn't do all the talking. I hope I didn't bore you, but I hope it helped you think a little bit more about the words that we use every day and how we should think about them and how we influence others. Thank you.